Hello again. I wanted to talk about another Christian who has blessed me greatly during my 30 years outside the Watchtower. I met him while I was still in, actually. I used to watch a TV show that was on in Canada in those days, the late 80s. Terry Winter Show. Some of you will remember it. Terry Winter died very early. I don't think he was much beyond 50 when he died, and I greatly missed that show. One of the people we met on it, because he had a guest that he interviewed every half-hour show every week, was Michael Green, the author of this book. Michael Green was an amazingly joyous man who happened to be an Anglican minister. I remember Vivian was still in the Watchtower when we first met him on that show. I was ahead of her in my removal from the Watchtower, so I was putting up with a lot of things that she hadn't yet learned to put up with. Michael Green's exuberance and enthusiasm was something she wasn't used to. That he could be an Anglican seemed unreal. I read many of Michael Green's books, and so did Vivian after she departed. This one was put out in 2001, called Adventure of Faith. It is a summary of his life's work. The subheading is Reflections on 50 Years of Christian Service. Michael Green is still with us. I believe he's in his late 80s now. Still serving. And in this book, he marvels toward the end of the book about the way things are going for the Anglican Church and the Church at large in the Asian world. And he has some things to say about why the Asian world is such a great place to be if you're a Christian nowadays. Let me read you a couple of excerpts from his book on just why this spiritual renewal is going on so wonderfully well over there. He's talking about life in Singapore in the 1990s and early 2000s and how the church seemed to be growing unbelievably fast over there. And then he talks about the reason for that in this way. The new life can perhaps be traced back to the appointment of the first Malaysian-born bishop, Subban. From the outset of his episcopate, he laid great emphasis on the Bible and determined to make the Anglican Church biblically literate. He recognized the importance of youth in Singapore, half of whose population was under 21, and took immediate steps to reach them with the gospel. Then he talks about the successor to this particular bishop, a man called Moses Tay. Moses Tay, he goes on, took very seriously the training of the clergy, being concerned to see that his ordinance gained a deep experience of God rather than concentrating merely on book learning. He also put in place an outstanding lay training course. There's little comparable anywhere else in the Anglican Communion. Church members were urged to attend it and to gain the diploma it offered. Consequently, there is a high level of Christian understanding among the lay people of Singapore. A little later in the chapter, he talks about the work in a place called Tawau. The vicar is Archdeacon Albert Vun, and he has seen the congregation grow from 500 a few years ago when the church operated in traditional mode to over 3,000 since he moved the church over into the cell church model. He has some 340 cells, and the number is increasing all the time. A cell church is a group of Christians in a tightly knit fellowship. Every cell is seen as a church, set in its neighborhood to impact it. Every cell leader is a pastor, who always has an assistant. The cell consists of a dozen or so people. When it exceeds 15, the cell splits into two, and the assistant leader assumes leadership of the second cell. From their very outset, cells have the intention of expanding and multiplying, usually within 6 months. No cell member is in for a static life. These cells can be of various types: a group of soldiers or civil servants, children, young people or students, or the normal mix that you would find in any congregation. He concludes, there's nothing iconoclastic about this deployment into cells. It is not change for the sake of change. It is change in pursuit of vision, the vision of building a great network of flexible, Christ-centered, and Spirit-filled groups which seek God's way to meet human need. Indeed, in Singapore, they have a wonderful vision of planting a cell in every street within the next 2 years. And they are well on the way to achieving this. Now, I don't know if they achieved it within 2 years, or whether there's been a few blips upon the way while they've been working in this direction, but Green is just shaking his head, wondering at the success the Asian churches are having, whereas we in the West seem to be so stagnant and stale. And I think part of it is that Green has long advocated the small group. The cell group that he's mentioning here is not a new idea invented in Asia. It's been around for decades. In fact, it's been around since the 1st century. The original Christian churches were small groups in private houses. So a return to that vision of the small group, which of course makes for greater responsibility to the individual, but also makes for greater accountability, greater community. One of the strongest advocates for that cause is Michael Green. So I strongly urge you to get any book you can by Michael Green. He's a wonderful blessing to the church.